Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some huge class buffs and nerfs to go over this week. There are some extra rewards coming for the Legion Remix game mode that you can prepare for ahead of time. Mythic plus dungeons should be quite a bit easier in Midnight thanks to some affix nerfs. We'll get a sneak preview of the Midnight pre-launch event very soon, and some of the new base UI add-on replacements have been updated as well. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down in this week's WoW News video. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's kick things off with the big class changes, buffs and nerfs that came through this week. There are quite a lot of general sweeping changes to where your damage comes from. For example, melee classes will see some huge increases to their auto attack damage, as the dev team wants that to be an important part of a melee spec's damage profile. That's going to make target uptime even more important for melee going forward. And then healers also got a 20% damage buff to all of their damage dealt this week. The dev team wants to make sure that healers can still comfortably complete open world content by themselves, so they'll keep an eye on overall damage throughput as we head into Midnight. For Death Knights, Blood is going to see a nerf to Coagulopathy's max stack count, and Blood Plague damage is reduced to 10% per stack, down from 25%. And then for Frost, they're going to see a 5% damage reduction across the board, but no further changes for now. Demon Hunters have a lot of updates for their Devourer spec. The melee build has been nerfed slightly, so the Fury Drain reduction from the Hunt and Void Blade was reduced by 50%. Reap's cooldown can now be reduced by haste. Rolling Torment was updated to give them some fury and a damage buff for unused souls, and then quite a few AoE abilities were nerfed while moving more damage into single target. So Void Ray can deal 50% more damage when damaging a single target. Collapsing Star deals additional damage to its primary target, but its overall damage was reduced by 50% as well, so a huge nerf to its AoE potential. Void Ray damage was nerfed by 25%, Meta Void Ray damage was cut down by 50%, Hungering Slash damage was reduced by 33%, Void Step damage took a massive 66% hit, but Devourer will now actually get Intellect from its Leather specialization passive instead of Agility, so that should help at least a little bit. Preservation Evokers must have been doing a bit too well so far because they're getting slapped with a 12% nerf to all of their healing done, but at least they have that damage boost to look forward to. For the Hunters, Marksmanship Apex talents are available to look at. They're going to increase the damage of rapid fire, and each shot reduces the cooldown of aimed shot. Aimed shot's crit damage is being increased by 25 or 50% of your crit damage, but I'm assuming that's supposed to be crit strike chance. That's how that kind of talent usually works. There's also 3 and 6% bonuses to other abilities' damage, and then the last node causes aimed shots to always crit, which is going to be very powerful, and will have a bunch of knock-on effects for your other talent and stat choices. There's a new talent that causes Surging Shot reset rapid fires to deal extra damage, as well as one that causes rapid fire to fire off a free arcane shot or kill shot when it begins and ends. Small Game Hunter now increases the damage of volley instead of explosive shot, and headshot was updated to be less impactful on your rotation. Double tap has also returned for marksmanship, so happy days. For survival, takedown range was reduced down to 15 yards from 25, so you'll have to be quite a bit closer to your target, which shouldn't really be a problem for a survival hunter, and then there's a bug fix for offhand weapons while dual wielding. Mages have a lot of adjustments this week too. For the Frostfire hero talent tree, Frostfire Bolt will see a 44% buff, but I'm assuming that's the damage over time portion because apparently Frostfire Bolt direct damage will be reduced by 25%. For Arcane specifically, Clear Casting will better communicate how many charges of Clear Casting you have. Illuminated Thoughts was nerfed down to a 3% increased chance to trigger Clear Casting. They'll see a 15% buff across the board for all damage dealt, as well as a further 50% increase to Arcane Blast and Arcane Pulse, and a 25% buff for Arcane Missiles. Fire has a couple of quick changes too. Feel the Burn was nerfed down to 2% mastery for 4 seconds, down from 3% mastery for 6 seconds, and Fireball had its damage reduced by 25%. Fire Blast and Flame Strike will see a 5% buff though. There is also a bug fix in here for Fireball not receiving increased damage from modifiers, so that should help offset the 25% damage reduction. Now Frost has a whole bunch of buffs and nerfs this week. Improved Flurry now causes Flurry to fire an additional missile. Thermal Void was changed to cause your next Ice Lance to repeat its cast at 100% effectiveness. There are quite a few other talent changes and updates in here too. Ice Lance will now shatter 5 stacks of freezing, but Shatter's damage has been cut down by 50%. Apparently it was dominating Frost's damage breakdown too much, so the dev team want to reduce the damage there and pump it into some of Frost's other abilities. So Frostbolt and Glacial Spike damage was doubled. Flurry, Ray of Frost and Ice Lance damage are all up 50%. Frozen Orb, Water Bolt and Water Jet will see 100% increases, and Hand of Frost damage has been increased by 25%. Honestly, this makes Frost play a lot smoother in my opinion, and some of these abilities now hit very hard indeed. Monks have a few changes for Mistweaver this week. Chi Warding is a new talent that heals you for 3% of magic damage taken. Secret Infusion has been redesigned to cause Thunder Focus Tea to let your spells increase stats, but only one stat increase may be active at a time. Spirit Font now applies Soothing Mist and Chi Cocoons at 30% effectiveness, down from 50%. They're going to see a 5% healing nerf across the board for all healing spells, and Thunder Focus Tea's cooldown was increased from 30 seconds up to 45, which is a pretty hefty increase. Next up we come to the Paladins. Holy has a new class talent that provides some defensive bonuses depending on the weapons that you have equipped, which is kind of interesting. Solar Grace now increases haste by 5%. Quite a few abilities have been redesigned or adjusted. Beacon of the Savior Absorb Shield was cut down by 50%, and all of their healing has been reduced by 5% as well. And then Retribution has a very quick 11% nerf to all of their damage, which definitely isn't ideal. Moving on to the Priests, Discipline has a couple of changes to Void Shield. Master the Darkness saw a huge nerf. It used to cause Void Shield to reflect 50% of damage taken, which was kind of insane, but it's been reduced down to 15%, and I wouldn't be surprised if that sees some further nerfs later on down the road. Void Shield and Power Word Shield now share a cooldown, and they can no longer stack on the same target per priest. Then we come to the Rogues, where we see those aforementioned auto-attack damage increases. Assassination will see a 200% buff to auto-attack damage, so they weren't kidding when they said they want auto-attacks to be a larger part of your damage profile as a melee DPS. They'll also see a 10% buff to Rupture and Garrote damage, a 5% nerf to Envenom damage, Internal Bleeding will see a 20% buff, and Implacable Strikes is getting a 30% buff. There are quite a few nerfs to energy generation though. Motivated Murder was knocked down to a 20% bonus to energy generation, Venomous Vim grants 3 energy down from 4, and Implacable Rank 1 now grants 20% energy regen when Envenom expires, down from 40%. For Outlaw, Taken by Surprise has been redesigned and renamed to Preparation. It's a 4-minute cooldown that instantly resets Adrenaline Rush, Between the Eyes, Blade Flurry, Blade Rush and Killing Spree, so you get all of your major tools back immediately to go in full force on the next monster pack. Acrobatic Strikes has been updated to increase auto-attack damage and increase movement speed for 3 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. All ability damage has been increased by 38%, which makes me worry a bit for how they were faring before these changes. Auto-attack damage will see a 210% damage increase, so again, melee attacks are going to be huge going forward. Summarily Dispatched was buffed up to 10 and 20%, Scoundrel Strikes damage was increased by 100%, and then there are a couple of other talent updates in here as well. Enhancement Shamans have what has got to be the most exciting change for any spec on this list, a 2% damage reduction across the board. That's it for now. Hopefully they'll at least get that big auto-attack damage boost in the next week or two. And then last but not least we come to the Warriors. Barbaric Training now also increases the damage and crit damage of Whirlwind and Raging Blow for Fury Warriors. Champion Spear damage dealt when leaping to the spear was reduced by 80%, and Thunderclap now applies Rend to all targets if you know Rend, instead of being target capped. Fury has their Apex talents to preview that increase the damage of Rampage, and you generate stacks of Rampaging Berserker that you consume when you use Recklessness to gain a strength buff. There's some bonus damage and rage reduction for Rampage, and casting Rampage will extend your strength buffs as well, so build up stacks and go crazy with your next Recklessness. Meat Cleaver has been updated so Whirlwind deals extra damage when it hits 3 or more targets. A couple of other talents were updated. Rampaging Ruins damage dealt was increased by 50%, 50%, but it's now target capped at 5, down from 8, and Unslaked Thirst has been removed. And then for protection, the Phalanx Apex talent will last for 8 seconds, up from 5. There's a new talent that gives Revenge some extra damage to your Devastator target, and Revenge was reverted to the current 11.2 functionality, so it will once again hit all targets in front of you baseline. Now remember that all of these changes are for the beta, so you won't see them appear on live servers anytime soon, and if you haven't seen the huge class changes coming in Midnight, you'll probably want to go over those first, because every class is going to play significantly differently when these class changes go live in the Midnight pre-patch. The Blue Post did mention that we should see balance tuning happen much faster this time around, so expect to see further adjustments as we approach the Midnight pre-patch. That's all for the class buffs and nerfs, but we have some other nerfs to talk about this week. The Mythic plus affixes from the current season will be carried forward into Midnight Season 1, but 3 of them will be quite a bit easier to deal with. Xal'atath's Bargain Ascendant now has an 8-second cast up from 6.5, she'll have an extra 1.5 seconds to deal with the orbs. Voidbound now has an 18-second cast up from 15, so you'll have 3 extra seconds to kill the Void Emissaries, and then Devour will also now apply a 10% slow. You might be thinking, well, surely that makes it harder to deal with now if it slows you as well, but the extra slow effect means you'll have more ways to remove the debuff, so any snare or slow removal ability should let you dispel yourself, so you won't have to rely on your healer or other dispels quite as much. So Mythic Plus could be a bit easier overall in Midnight Season 1, which would fit in quite well with the dev team's overall goals for combat and content difficulty. Now in other news, some Midnight Beta data mining confirms various sources and bronze costs for decor items that will be rewarded from the Legion Remix event. We're going to have altars, corruption pits, storage chests, fountains, a bunch of cages and chains, and a lot of Fel-themed lighting pieces too. So if you want your house to look like it was recently invaded by the Legion, these items should be a lot of fun to play around with and place. If you're interested in picking up these decor items as soon as they're available, you want to make sure you've completed the appropriate achievements, and you want to save up some bronze as well. Thankfully, they don't seem to be too expensive overall, so they shouldn't take away from your other rewards or goals too much, but it is worth noting that when you buy a piece of housing decor, you're only buying the ability to place one of that item for each one you purchase. So if you want a whole bunch of Fel-themed torches, or you want 20 Fel pits to surround your house, you'll have to buy however many you want to place, which does raise the question of how this works for time-limited events. If you don't buy these items now, or you only buy one but you want to place more of them later on, how do you go about purchasing more of them after the event ends, especially for something like Legion Remix, which we don't really expect to come around very often. Hopefully there's an event vendor or something added in, because that does seem like a huge oversight, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. You probably won't be able to actually buy these items until patch 11.27 goes live on December 2nd, but it never hurts to prepare for things in advance. There were also a lot of hotfixes this week that addressed various problems with achievements, rewards, and artifact appearances. The Broken Shore achievement was sometimes not properly rewarding the Fallen King's corrupted blades, but that should now have been fixed. There were also various fixes or workarounds for hidden artifact appearances that weren't working. So Demon Hunters, Druids, Mages, Monks, and Warlocks now have access to various Order Hall advancements. Horos now sells the Shard of Darkness for Rep Paladins, the Tome of Otherworldly Venoms for Sub-Rogues, and the Designs of the Grand Architect for BM Hunters. Disc Priests can find their books among the stacks of Infinite Chrono Queries near Page Turner Metros, and Unholy DKs can find a time-warped trapdoor in Putricide's secret lab. So if you've been struggling to get your hidden appearances in Legion Remix, hopefully these fixes should clear the way forward. Now moving on, the Midnight Beta went live this week, and one of the most exciting additions is the new login screen for the Midnight expansion. I am so happy that this wasn't data mined in an unfinished state like the War Within login screen was, because this void themed screen is very cool indeed. I love the little void shards that float inwards, and overall this might be one of my favourite login screens from recent expansions. I think it's kinda hard to go wrong with the void theme sometimes. Void and Fel always seem to work well almost no matter matter what. It's just a shame that we don't really spend any time on the login screen anymore. Well, unless it's launch day of a brand new expansion, I guess we'll get to admire it enough in a couple of months' time, but this does make me very excited for new character select screen camps and backgrounds. There's a huge amount of untapped potential there, and I hope the dev team creates some new ones for us to use and collect. In other Midnight news, we'll finally get to see what the big expansion pre-patch event is going to look like. On Monday, November 17th, which is today if you're watching this video right as it goes up, the dev team will be testing the Midnight pre-launch event on the test realms. It will kick off at 11 AM PST and only run for about 2 hours, though the post does say the realms will remain online for a little bit longer to give some extra testing time, but the main focus test will be in that short time window. Not only does this give us an early preview of what the Midnight pre-patch event is going to look like, or what kinds of rewards are going to be on offer, but it's also the best chance we have to make sure the patch and event are smooth when it actually hits live servers. These big events tend to be plagued with problems early on, and while they do seem to get fixed quite quickly, it would be nice to have an event launch with everything working and in a good playable state. So if you have some spare time today, hop on the test realms and give a bit of feedback for the pre-patch event. It really is the best way to improve the patch for launch day. And then to round out this week's video, we have a couple of updates for the upgraded base UI coming in Midnight. The integrated damage meter is starting to take shape, and you can now edit and customize its appearance on the beta. Curiously, a few new tracking types have been data mined for the integrated meters as well, including damage taken, which is always useful to track, avoidable damage taken, which is more interesting and kind of makes me raise an eyebrow a little bit. There are add-ons that track avoidable damage and posted in chat whenever someone stands in something they could have avoided, and for the most part they seem to be met with disdain. So it's interesting to me that the dev team would include this as an option. It's arguably very useful for personal accountability and seeing where you could improve, but it's also been used to just put folks on blast for taking extra damage. So we'll see how that pans out with an integrated meter, I guess, and then we'll also be able to track absorbs, which you would kinda hope to see. Now, even though we can tinker around with some settings, the damage meter doesn't actually work yet, so we'll have to wait for a future update to see how it all works properly, and whether it's a good replacement for damage meter add-ons. We've also got a pretty big update to the default raid frames. Some new icons and outlines have been data mined that should help highlight various debuffs much easier. There's a coloured outline and a new icon for each of the major debuffs, and with there being an empty outline for each, you'll probably have the option to display the icon or not. The dev team did give us a preview of these outlines in their raid frames update post a little while ago, but it's nice to see them work their way into the beta. It looks like the Dungeon Journal is also going to be updated with these new icons, which would make sense. Keeping these kinds of graphics consistent will really help when it comes to visually processing debuffs and abilities during a busy encounter. But that's all of the updates we have so far, so that's it for this week's WoW News video. What do you think of the new Midnight login screen, and what do you think is the most important UI element for the dev team to really get right as we head into Midnight? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching, folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.